This thrilling story begins many years ago, showing a time when a dark witch existed. She had the power to control numerous creatures, and her only goal was to completely eliminate humans with the help of these creatures. Once humans were gone, she would rule the earth and run it as she pleased. She had already caused immense destruction in various places across the planet, and if she wasn't stopped, she might succeed in her plan. However, during that time, there was a brave king named Arthur. He, along with his soldiers, set out to stop the witch. King Arthur was already aware of the witch's powers and realized that they stood no chance against her army of creatures. So, he devised a plan. He selected a few of his soldiers and went directly to the witch, who was standing on a cliff, performing a strange ritual. At this moment, King Arthur declared that he was ready to surrender, that he and his soldiers would not fight her and would instead help her succeed in her plan. The witch eventually began to trust Arthur. But just as she least expected, Arthur and his soldiers took advantage of the perfect opportunity, eliminating all of the witch's allies and capturing her. The witch possessed such an immense amount of dark energy that she could not be easily killed. However, King Arthur wielded a powerful sword, which had been passed down through his family since ancient times. This sword contained divine power, making it the only weapon capable of destroying the witch. Arthur and his brave soldiers battled against the witch's army and ultimately, using the powerful sword, he managed to vanquish the witch. Arthur then hid the witch's body in a secure location to ensure that no one would ever find it in the future. This entire event was kept a secret forever. Peace was restored everywhere, and Arthur returned to his kingdom. Now, the story shifts to the 25th century. The Earth has undergone significant advancements, becoming highly futuristic. At this point, we are introduced to Hellboy, a fierce, red-skinned warrior. Hellboy worked for those who stood for good, fighting against evil forces around the world. One day, Hellboy went to a club searching for an old ally, someone who had been researching vampires but had mysteriously disappeared. As soon as Hellboy entered the club, he discovered the shocking truth: his ally had now turned into a vampire. Inside, the transformed ally was unleashing his full power, brutally attacking his opponents. That's why, to stop this massive chaos, Hellboy himself steps into the ring. His ally had completely lost control and didn't even recognize his own friend. In his true vampire form, he launched a fierce attack on Hellboy. But how could Hellboy just sit back quietly? He also unleashed his powers, using immense superhuman stamina to take him down. Even though Hellboy never wanted to do this, his friend was hellbent on taking his life. With no other choice, Hellboy had to kill him. With that, his current mission was complete. He immediately headed to a massive facility where the professor resided. The professor had raised Hellboy since childhood, and Hellboy considered him his father. The professor was proud of Hellboy for his relentless efforts to maintain peace. However, at this moment, a new mission had arrived. The professor explained that several mysterious creatures had been spotted in England, attacking and taking the lives of many people. It was clear, Hellboy needed to go there, build his team, and put an end to the destruction caused by these creatures. Hellboy deeply respected his father, so without hesitation, he set off for England to complete the mission. Upon arriving, he encountered a witch who was known for her prophecies. Her entire body was decayed and rotting, yet she provided Hellboy with crucial information about the mission. Following her guidance, Hellboy went to a place where the city's most powerful businessmen and wealthy individuals resided. These people had access to all the latest information about what was happening in the world at that moment. Hellboy's plan was simple: he wanted to stay in contact with them so that if any unusual activity occurred in the city, he would be the first to know. The moment everyone saw Hellboy, they were left in shock. His massive size and overwhelming strength were enough to astonish them. Among them was a woman with pure white eyes. The instant she saw Hellboy, she realized there was something special about him. As Hellboy finished explaining his purpose and was about to leave, the woman suddenly stopped him. She had something important to say. She began revealing Hellboy's past, the story of when he first arrived on Earth. From his name itself, it was clear that he was a small demon who had come from hell. In the beginning, the professor, whom Hellboy considers his father, found him and took him in. Everyone else called him a devil, but the professor must have seen something good in him. At one point, even he was convinced to kill Hellboy, but he ultimately changed his mind. The woman with white eyes then revealed a future possibility. When Hellboy grows to his full potential and gains all his powers, he will be the reason for the world's destruction. Hellboy was deeply troubled by her words. How could this be true? He only wanted to protect people. Why would he ever destroy the world? He refused to believe it and left immediately. However, thoughts about his past still haunted him, especially how people had always hated and feared him. Now, the story shifts to a massive church where several priests were performing a ritual. Unbeknownst to them, a terrifying creature resembling a giant pig was approaching. This pig monster was enormous and horrifying. The moment it arrived, it unleashed chaos, killing everyone in its path and storming inside the church. The pig monster was searching for something. It went down into the basement and retrieved a strange-looking box. Inside the box was the severed head of the Dark Witch, the very same witch that King Arthur and his warriors had slain years ago. This meant that the pig monster was working for the Dark Witch and intended to bring her back to life. Long ago, after King Arthur and his soldiers defeated the Dark Witch, they dismembered her body and hid the parts in different locations. This was done to ensure that she could never return. If her body were ever reassembled, she would become even more powerful than before and would seek to destroy the world. And this time, her rage would be uncontrollable, for she had always despised humans. But the pig monster wasn't alone. Many other creatures were aiding it, all wanting the Dark Witch to return. Meanwhile, Hellboy had arrived at the scene with his allies from the hotel. His mission was clear: to eliminate these creatures before they could cause more destruction. As he explored the vast garden, he discovered something alarming: giants. These giants were armed with razor-sharp swords and were laying waste to an entire village. To stop them, Hellboy charged straight toward them. However, avoiding their attacks was no easy task. The giants were enormous, and compared to them, Hellboy seemed tiny. But Hellboy was incredibly brave. Without fear, he fought the creatures head-on, determined to take them down one by one. Killing them was his ultimate mission. Using his small size to his advantage, he jabbed sharp wooden stakes into their eyes, creating an opening to strike. Seizing the opportunity, he grabbed one of their massive swords and launched a counterattack. With sheer determination, Hellboy managed to slay many of the creatures. Eventually, he even defeated the largest of them. However, the battle took a heavy toll on him. He was severely wounded and collapsed from exhaustion. A while later, when Hellboy opened his eyes, he found himself in the presence of a woman named Alice. Alice had brought him to her home and was tending to his injuries. It was here that we learned about Alice's unique ability: she could communicate with the spirits of the dead. Alice revealed that the spirits of her deceased father and relatives were present in the room, trying to communicate with her. They kept repeating that Hellboy must die. They warned that if he ever became the most powerful being, he would destroy the entire world. But Alice didn't believe them. From what she had learned about Hellboy, he was incapable of such evil. He had no desire to harm anyone. So she reasoned that they needed to uncover why these spirits were saying such things about him. Not long after, the professor arrived. Seeing Hellboy alive and well, he was overjoyed. The professor knew that Hellboy had successfully completed his first mission, but a far greater challenge lay ahead. He then began telling Hellboy about King Arthur. Many years ago, Arthur and his knights had slain the Dark Witch. To ensure she could never return, they had dismembered her body and hidden the parts in different locations. But now, there were reports that the Dark Witch's followers were working to resurrect her, and they had already begun their efforts. The professor then assigned Hellboy a new mission. He had to prevent the Dark Witch's resurrection at all costs. If she returned, she would wipe out humanity. Hellboy accepted the mission without hesitation. To assist him, Major Ben joined the team. Major Ben then provided Hellboy with crucial information. One of the Dark Witch's body parts was located at the very place where Hellboy had previously spoken with the investors and businessmen. This meant that her followers would undoubtedly go there to retrieve it. Realizing the urgency, Hellboy, Major Ben, and Alice immediately set off for the location. Unfortunately, every single person there had been killed. The condition of the clubhouse was horrific, as if a great battle had taken place. The missing body part was also gone, which could only mean one thing: the Dark Witch and her followers had already come and taken it. The woman with white eyes was also dead. That's why Alice tried to communicate with her spirit. After a few moments, the woman's spirit emerged and began warning Hellboy. She told him that the Dark Witch was being revived, and if she returned with full power, she would summon terrifying creatures that would annihilate humanity. Under no circumstances could they allow this to happen. Even the spirit was frightened, as the Dark Witch's powers had already increased significantly. After giving this crucial information, her spirit returned to her body. Now, Hellboy and his team knew exactly what they had to do and how to do it. As Hellboy was leaving, he heard a noise from inside. When he went to investigate, he discovered that it was the pig monster. The creature had come to retrieve the severed hand of the Dark Witch. Hellboy couldn't let him get away with it. He did everything he could to stop the pig monster and prevent him from escaping with the body part. However, there was a major problem. Although the Dark Witch had not yet fully revived, some of her body parts were already present, which allowed her to use her powers. At this moment, her spirit appeared and opened a strange portal, saving the pig monster. This was the first time Hellboy had seen the Dark Witch's face. The pig monster also harbored deep hatred for Hellboy. Years ago, when Alice was born, she had been secretly swapped with another monster. Fortunately, Hellboy had discovered the truth and exposed the pig monster's real identity. That revelation had changed the pig monster's entire life, which was why he now sought revenge against Hellboy. But at this point, Hellboy and his allies were powerless to stop what was happening. Meanwhile, we saw the Dark Witch's body parts being reassembled. Rituals were being performed alongside the process to restore her full power. Finally, her entire body was connected. However, one thing was still missing. Years ago, when King Arthur used his sword to slay the Dark Witch, all her blood spilled out and was absorbed by a nearby tree. Because of this, the Dark Witch told her followers that she needed to reach that tree so she could transfer all of her blood back into her body. Meanwhile, Hellboy, Alice, and Ben found themselves at a loss, so they went straight to the professor, seeking a solution. However, the professor himself was extremely troubled. He couldn't find any other way to stop the Dark Witch or match her growing strength. He wanted Hellboy to eliminate her at any cost and restore peace. For the first time, the professor scolded Hellboy, accusing him of working too slowly. But Hellboy knew he had tried his best, yet he still couldn't reach the Dark Witch. This conversation led to a heated argument between them, and Hellboy, furious, stormed off. As he stepped into an elevator, something strange happened. The lift began moving to an unknown destination, seemingly under the influence of dark magic. Within moments, Hellboy found himself in a place that didn't seem to exist in reality. This was the domain of another witch, one he had encountered before, the same witch who had previously given him information about the monsters. She now made him an offer. She would provide information about the Dark Witch, but in return, she wanted Hellboy's powerful right hand. Hellboy's hand was immensely powerful, capable of defeating even the strongest creatures and demons. Though he agreed to the deal, he had no intention of actually giving up his hand. Using his wit, he extracted the Dark Witch's location from her, then destroyed her magical domain before escaping. Now, Hellboy knew exactly where to find the Dark Witch. Without wasting time, he set off with Alice and Major Ben. However, it seemed they were already too late. By the time they arrived, the Dark Witch had reached the ancient tree, cut it down, and absorbed her lost blood. This meant she had regained her full strength and was now more powerful than ever before. Using her magic, she resurrected several monstrous creatures, beasts that had once sought to wipe out humanity centuries ago. Perhaps the time had finally come when humanity would be doomed. As Hellboy and his team arrived to stop the Dark Witch, she used her dark magic to push them away. She gravely injured Alice and then disappeared along with her monstrous creatures. Hellboy desperately tried to save his friend Alice. Just then, another witch, who had once worked with the Dark Witch but had now turned against her, appeared. This good witch promised Hellboy that she would help him. But first, they had to save Alice. She guided them, saying that they needed to travel to the hills and awaken a very old sage. Following her instructions, Hellboy and Ben carried Alice to the location and opened the ancient sage's resting place. This old man had lived during the time of King Arthur and his knights. It was he who had once guided Arthur on how to kill the Dark Witch. As soon as the sage awakened, he used his powers to heal Alice. Then, he began to reveal the only way to defeat the Dark Witch. Taking Hellboy with him, he led him to King Arthur's legendary sword, the same weapon that had once slain the Dark Witch. However, the moment Hellboy approached the sword, terrifying visions flooded his mind. He saw himself with his horns fully grown, riding a monstrous dragon and unleashing destruction upon humanity. His power had grown to such an extent that the entire world was engulfed in chaos. This vision was exactly the same as the one the evil witch had once predicted, a future where Hellboy would lose control and wipe out humankind. Fear gripped Hellboy. He refused to pick up the sword, afraid that he might be the one to bring doom upon the world. But this hesitation came at a cost. The old sage, growing weaker, warned him that he had just lost a great opportunity. Soon after, the sage disintegrated into dust, vanishing forever. Hellboy had made his decision. No matter what, he would never harm humanity. But now, the sword was gone, and Hellboy was left completely hopeless. Meanwhile, the city fell into chaos. The Dark Witch had unleashed her monstrous creatures, spreading destruction everywhere. The sky turned black as if an impending apocalypse had begun. In the midst of all this devastation, the Dark Witch discovered that the professor and his secret community were devising a plan to kill her. Furious, she stormed into their hideout with her creatures and immediately kidnapped the professor. By the time Hellboy, Alice, and Major Ben arrived in the city, everything was already in ruins. Seeing the devastation all around, Hellboy and his team immediately realized that this must be the work of the Dark Witch. They rushed to find the professor, only to discover that the witch had already taken him. Hellboy was devastated. No matter what, he considered the professor his father. Alice couldn't just stand by and watch, so she used her connection with the spirits to locate the Dark Witch. Without wasting any time, they set off toward a massive structure where she was hiding. As Hellboy, Alice, and Major Ben entered, they were confronted by the pig monster. It had grown significantly stronger than before. The Dark Witch was there as well, watching the battle unfold. Wasting no time, the pig monster launched an attack. Hellboy fought with all his might to stop and kill it, but the Dark Witch had granted it some of her powers, making it even more formidable. Just then, it was revealed that Major Ben wasn't entirely human. He was a powerful, upgraded leopard-like creature. With his beastly form, he joined Hellboy in fighting the pig monster, and the battle escalated into pure destruction. But the Dark Witch had planned everything. She intentionally knocked Hellboy down, making him fall into a chamber where Arthur's legendary sword lay. She then taunted him, urging him to pick up the sword. She knew that doing so would open the gates of hell, and she wanted a ruler to help her conquer the world. No one was more powerful than Hellboy. Hellboy knew what would happen if he took the sword, but he had no other choice. He grasped it. Instantly, his horns regrew, his body surged with unlimited power, and he began to grow in size. The most shocking event followed. Right in the middle of the city, the gates of hell opened. From within, massive, terrifying creatures emerged. These monstrous beings stormed the city, destroying everything humans had built. They slaughtered people mercilessly, attempting to claim the world as their own. The Dark Witch had planned this all along. She had deliberately provoked Hellboy, knowing that his power would unleash hellish creatures upon the world. As the destruction spread, the Dark Witch continued manipulating Hellboy, persuading him to rule the world alongside her. But the professor, who had been watching helplessly, kept shouting at Hellboy, pleading with him. He urged him to sever his horns with the sword and cast it away. Only then could the world be saved. Would Hellboy listen? Or was it already too late? But the Dark Witch was determined not to let that happen. To stop Hellboy from breaking free, she killed the professor. At this moment, Hellboy was so lost in his trance that he didn't even realize what was happening in the real world. The professor was the only one who could reach him. Seeing no other option, Alice used her powers to summon the professor's spirit. His soul appeared before Hellboy and continued pleading with him. "You must do this. Don't listen to the Dark Witch, she only wants destruction." This time, Hellboy finally understood. He grabbed Arthur's sword and, without hesitation, severed his own horns. As soon as he did, the gates of hell began closing. The monstrous creatures that had escaped were pulled back inside. Hellboy's overwhelming power vanished, restoring him to his original form. But he wasn't done yet. Without wasting a second, he used Arthur's sword to behead the Dark Witch. Then, he tossed her body into the closing gates of hell, ensuring she could never return. The battle was over. Despite all the pain and struggle, Hellboy had saved humanity. His entire team had fought bravely, protecting the world from these demonic forces. But Hellboy had learned an important lesson. He had seen what he could become, how dangerous his power truly was. That's why he decided never to use Arthur's sword again. With peace restored, the team felt relieved and victorious. They were ready for whatever mission came next, but this time, they would enjoy their victories a little more. And with that, our story comes to an end.